You're listening to the New Artist Workshop.
I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
Is Gandalf not the Wandering Wizard?
Hello and welcome back to your favorite podcast. Now that's what I call a franchise. I'm Peter Mancuso.
And I'm Viviana Metzger, and this is the show where Peter and I pick a film franchise and go through every single installment. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I started reading your line.
And to be clear, which is my line, we are defining a franchise as a series of films with at least 4 entries. We are starting a new season. We are doing Middle-earth, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, all that good stuff. So, Viviana, what are we talking about today?
All right, so today we are talking about the 1977 film, The Hobbit. And this year, one and only spoiler warning. So if you haven't watched the movie, go do that before listening to this episode. We watched it on Max.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because this came out in 1977, the same year as the original Star Wars. It's interesting that they came out the same year because on one hand, you have an incredibly influential fantasy epic that, you know, completely revolutionized the medium and culture. And then there was Star Wars.
Very funny.
Oh, why don't you read the blurb?
My co-host is very funny. All right, here's the letterbox blurb. Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbit, was just minding his own business when his occasional visitor Gandalf the Wizard drops in one night. One by one, a whole group of dwarves drop in, and before he knows it, Bilbo has joined their quest to reclaim their kingdom, taken from them by the evil dragon Smaug. The only problem is that Gandalf has told the dwarves that Bilbo is an expert burglar, but he isn't. ... Ellipses.
On Letterboxd, the descriptions are sourced from TMDB, but this is not like a super, what would the word be? Like, it hasn't been viewed often. It's not like it's been logged many times. Like, this is kind of a little more like under the surface. Mm-hmm. So I feel like sometimes with those, the description is like a crapshoot on like the style. So, Bilbo Baggins, he was just minding his own business.
I love that.
They told him that Bilbo's an expert burglar, but he isn't. Oh, well, this is awkward.
You know, sometimes it happens.
Though, interestingly, I don't know if this movie, maybe I just missed it because there was a lot going on, but I don't know if the movie portrayed the fact that Gandalf lied and said he was an expert burglar. Because, like, this is very condensed from the book. Like, it feels almost like someone took the blurb for the book. Because it feels like in this movie, they just show up and they're like, you're going on this adventure. And he's like, oh, okay.
Well, I guess him just being there. I mean, they don't really talk about it much after.
Yeah.
They're just like, hey, you're an expert. Go in there in that scary cave. We don't want to go in there.
Just because I'm a little hobbit.
And
that's racist.
And that's like the only time that it comes up again, I think.
Yeah.
Or like of any importance. So, does it really matter?
I guess not.
That part.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
It's very condensed.
He never disputed it as well.
But that's what I'm saying is that like they do, the book is pretty short, but they do a lot of kind of like generalizing some events to like just make it a little more streamlined. So I feel like that was something maybe lost in translation.
What kind of character is this Bilbo? Was he always the way he was in the movies? No, that's because of the ring, right? How was he before the ring?
Well, the whole point is that like he's not adventurous, but maybe that's why Gandalf picked him to do this because it transformed him into being more adventurous. Because before he was just like, I just want to stay at home and eat cakes and drink tea.
I feel there might be other ways to do that.
Maybe skydiving.
But I don't understand this burglar situation. Like,
well, because he's a little guy. Even for the dwarves, he's a little guy.
He's not a dwarf.
No, I'm saying, but even compared to dwarves, hobbits are small, I think.
Oh. Well, you know, I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense, and there's not much character development. So
No. The book is a little bit better, right? As you would expect, because it's like a book and can like explore their internal thoughts more so than like a movie can. Especially like a cheap animated TV special from the 70s is ever gonna try to do, right?
Because because I wasn't like totally surprised when Gandalf like labeled him like that because of how I know him in the movies,
like the Lord of the Rings, like
and he is kind of like, I don't even know what you would call, like a little trickster, or like, you know, I don't know, whatever word you would use to describe that. So I was like, okay, maybe he's known for like burglaring or something.
Burglaring.
And it's known because like the hobbits don't do anything, and so it's like he's the one who goes out to steal stuff or whatever.
But alas, not the case.
That's not true. So now I'm just kind of wondering who.
Like, that's why Bilbo's so revered in this town later on, because he's like the one guy who's like gone out, kind of.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Which is weird, because they could just leave.
Why would you?
Just walk a foot off the Shire.
It's paradise. The Shire is a paradise.
I know, just saying.
I want a little house in the hills.
If you want to look, you just go roll across the river, you know.
Roll across the river.
It wasn't that hard. And then you see, oh, more trees. Okay, back home.
No,
like, you know?
There's lots of different stuff to see. Lots of mishaps to get. They're kind of dangerous.
Quite dangerous.
Like lots of obstacles and challenges and foes.
Giant man-eating spiders.
Oh, the spiders, the goblins.
I can't with that. The giant spiders. Ugh.
They're kind of creepy. Do you want to hear some basic info?
Like in Harry Potter.
Oh, it is like Harry Potter. Oh, I don't like it.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so this was directed by Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass, of course, of Rankin and Bass acclaim, though acclaim maybe is the wrong word. You know, famous, of course, for their holiday TV specials, usually stop motion, but sometimes hand-drawn animation, like Rudolph, Frosty, Santa Claus Coming to Town, The Little Drummer Boy, that whole suite of TV specials, right? Written by Romeo Muller, who also would write a lot of those things. Produced by Bassett, Rankin and Bass. Distributed by NBC, so this was on NBC. Released November of 1977. I wrote 97 in my notes. 1977. And had a budget of about $3 million. But obviously did not have a box office because it was not in theaters. You obviously didn't know this existed at all.
No.
Maybe this is a good idea. Maybe this is a good time, since we don't do like a pre-episode for our seasons, maybe talking a little bit about your experience with Middle Earth in general.
Okay. So really all that I like formally know of, like, I'm sure, you know, doing all of this has like it's opened my eyes to the other stuff in like a GameStop or whatever. You know, people do a lot of like stuff outside of the actual thing, right? So like fan fiction or like different comics,
or like spin-offs and stuff.
Yeah, like all the extra Star Wars lore stuff. So I'm sure there's that, but formally just the 3 movies and that I've seen. And then I know of the Hobbit movies, which at the time I really wanted to go see, but I just like didn't have the time or something. I just like ended up not seeing it. And for some reason I have not watched it.
Well, they're not, from my understanding, they're not particularly great.
Well, no.
Or at least they're a huge downgrade from the original 3 films.
Yeah. Well, I was still interested because I'm like, I really like the lore and world building of Middle Earth and everything. It actually, I think like most things, I wasn't particularly keen to it at first. I think the first time I knew about it was maybe like 2010, 2011. And I spent the summer at my cousin's house. And so my cousin Jake was like, oh, let's watch Lord of the Rings. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, oh, you've never watched Lord of the Rings? Okay,
And you're
we're
like,
gonna
no,
watch it.
I'm like 7.
You're like,
Or however old
I'm
you
like,
are.
I'm a 12-year-old girl. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm just a girly. I don't know anything about that
It's
stuff.
like, I don't think my mom would let me watch it. And watched it, liked it, terrified, thought that Gollum was hiding in the bathtub behind the shower curtain. So took me a little while.
He is pretty creepy.
So
So which is creepier, the live action
Very
one or the one in the Gollum in this one? This one, he's like a weird lizard creature almost.
this one, yeah, he's like a little fish thing. No, that's fine. The one, the Andy Serkis one, it like really freaks me out. That took a while to get adjusted to. I was actually like very scared. I was actually very scared of it and like didn't want to watch the movie again. It was kind of like with Spider-Man when Green Goblin is like stabbed by his own glider board thing, and I saw that and was like traumatized and like never wanted to watch Spider-Man again. Anywho, so fast forward, love Star Wars, LOL. Middle
We're
Earth.
done with that.
We're done with that. Middle Earth. I think I have watched it through at least 3 times.
Because you and I have done it twice.
Yes, the 3 times extended edition, and then the 1 time just the first one. So 3 times, all 3 of them extended, and then 1 time we went and just saw the first one, but it was with the live orchestra.
Yes, at Madison Square Garden, yeah.
So
Though the first time you and I watched it, they weren't the extended versions. It was just the DVD version
No?
we had. No. It was during COVID at my parents' house. We had the DVDs. It was just the original. It was just like the regular versions. And then we watched them. We made your grandparents watch them all.
Okay.
And that was extended versions.
Okay, so 2 times extended versions, and then
You had seen both is the point we're trying to get at. We've seen both
obviously have
versions.
seen the first one more. I think just 1 time more. But yeah. Anyways.
So it's interesting about Middle Earth for me because
Yeah,
you would
what's your
think this would be
experience?
you would think this would be like my shit. And it is my shit.
No, you're
but
a Star Wars dude.
But that's the thing is I was always a Star Wars kid. And I think I was a little too young for when these movies came out because they came out like the and we're taking the movies, we obviously mean like the Peter Jackson
movies.
trilogy, right?
There are no other movies right now.
Right? There was because they came out 2001, 2, and 3. So I was too
Yeah.
young to be into it like when it was coming out versus like Star Wars like you could be into it because the Star Wars movies were coming out around the same time, but it's Star Wars. It's a little more accessible, whereas Lord of the Rings is way more
'Cause
dense and
if it was this, then that'd be fine. But your exposure was probably like the movies, like the real ones.
yeah. Well, I didn't see them in theaters at all because I wasn't.
I know. I'm just saying, like, in terms of like Star Wars also came out the same year, but you watched that, so you could have watched something like this.
Yeah, I just had
if
zero
you knew
interest
about it, or
I think I knew it
interest.
existed. I just didn't really have much interest
Yeah.
in it, because I didn't have like that foundational appreciation for the material. Because the Lord of the Rings movie, and I don't want to just talk about the Peter Jackson movies because we're gonna get to it, and that's not what this episode's about. But like, it can't be overstated how much of like a miracle those films were, because it often been called that the Lord of the Rings books were unfilmable. That it was just too the VFX required would be too expensive or ridiculous until the advent of like CGI and stuff. Though a lot of the Peter Jackson movies are like on location stuff, but doing like those massive battles, like you need a lot of CGI,
3
right?
at once.
Right?
That's fun.
But not even that, but just there's just so much material that it's like, what do you cut out? And like you lose some of the essence of it, right? So the fact that those were made were a miracle.
Yeah.
But not for a lack of trying, right? And that's where we get some of these animated movies, and there's going to be a couple other ones that they made, like, again, this is the late 70s and then a little bit in the early 80s. But it was just something that never appealed to me. I just didn't have an interest. I always had like an interest from afar, like, oh, I bet that's interesting. But like one day I'll cross that bridge.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a lot of like, there's like key things, like for example, like I still haven't watched The Sopranos. Right? Like there's certain things I'm like, one day.
Yeah.
But I'm not ready yet. Not because I don't think I'll like it, but just like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just not in a place right now to like give myself over to it. When I finally watched the first movie, I think I was like in middle school, so I rented the DVD from Blockbuster or something. And I didn't like it. Like I was kind of bored.
Slow.
It was
dark.
Especially for, I was like 12, it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, whatever. And then I tried watching it again in college. And I had the same experience.
Oh.
I really liked the first maybe 45 minutes. And then once they leave the Shire, I was really bored.
Really?
Yeah. And
really do much in the Shire.
Well, I just thought because it was interesting. They're running around and having like I just found it more interesting because it was like the setup.
Yeah.
And then when I was in college, my roommate Harvey, my good friend Harvey, is obsessed with them. Like he was like he loved Star Wars, but Lord of the Rings was like his Star Wars. Like he watched them from like being a kid because he had an older brother who who had read the books, so his brother knew all the lore. Like Harvey was like like a Lord of the Rings nerd. Like he knew all the stuff that isn't in the movies, like the backstory, the additional material, like everything.
I like to call myself a fan, but I'm just scratching the surface.
So no, really. So he was like. I was like, Harvey, I've only watched the first one, and it was not the extended version. He was like, well, he was like, the best way to experience it, we're going to watch all 3 extended versions in one day. That was a mistake. Because I liked it more than I had watched than before. By the end, I was just ready. I was so tired. I literally, when I say tired, I don't mean like emotionally. I mean like it was like I wanted to go to sleep. That's how tired I was. Because we woke up at like 7 a.m. and we did this till like 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. Because it's 12 hours, but we didn't watch it all the way through. We took like a lunch break, a dinner break. Like we took breaks in between each movie. So it was like, all in all, it was like a 14, 15 hour ordeal.
Extended, yeah.
Then you and I watched it, and we did one a day. That's where really it was unlocked for me.
Yeah.
This material. I don't know if it's just because we spread it out, or if it was because I was older, I was a different film consumer or enjoyer. I would say maybe consumer is the wrong word. But in any case, that's when it finally clicked. And then we watched the extended editions like a year later, did the same thing with one a day. I'd already seen the extended, but now kind of having the breathing. Oh, excuse me, I just burped. I like breathed, but I was also trying to hold in a burp, and it kind of just all came out. But something they finally unlocked, and now they're some of my favorite movies ever.
Interesting.
You know, I don't know what changed in me. Maybe a global pandemic. I don't know. But I don't know what changed, but something changed. The movies obviously didn't change. I changed. So,
yeah.
But that being said, the only book I read, and was actually during COVID, I read The Hobbit.
Oh.
And we have it. If not, it might be in my box of stuff to sell. Because I don't. It's not a favorite of mine.
Maybe I should read it.
We have it. No one's bought it. It's been on eBay for like a year and a half, so feel free to go grab it.
But I think you're I think you as a person, I'm not really sure what, maybe interests or bandwidth, tolerance, I don't know, appreciation, something changed, because I also felt like the same thing about like the Harry Potter films. Like everyone was obsessed, and I was like, these are just long, dark, boring movies. But like I was also like 6, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's not really engaging. But you know, growing older, it's like, oh my god, this is crazy. Yeah. And I've always liked medieval stuff. I don't know why. I've like always been kind of drawn to it.
See, that's my thing, is I've never liked
that's why
that period of history.
That's why.
And obviously this is not set in our history, or at least not in the medieval. If anything, it's meant to set like 6,000. It's theoretically
fantastic.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you want me to give you some background? Not the background on this movie, but just like
on that
Tolkien and like writing this mythology. Yes. So Tolkien comes from, and I know sometimes people say Tolkien. It's both ways. It depends on just, I like saying Tolkien because it's funny.
Okay. I was like, I thought it was Tolkien.
Because if I say Tolkien too fast, it sounds like I say token.
Yeah.
or talking. So if I say Tolkien, it like forces me to slow down and say Tolkien. But anyway, J.R.R. He has 2 middle names?
Oh.
I guess I don't know what the other two. We could probably look it up.
Whatever.
And by probably, I mean we can't. I don't know why sometimes I say we probably could look it up. Like we could look it up. Anyway, he was like, I believe this all started because he liked making up languages. Because he was a linguist by trade.
Wasn't he like a Catholic linguist, and then it like...
Well, he was Catholic in that, like, that was his religion. He wasn't like a priest or a religious order.
I thought that inspired his work greatly.
Well, I think in perhaps unconscious ways. I don't know how much of it he was like, I'm doing this. Whereas someone like C.S. Lewis, who did the Chronicles of Narnia, another British Catholic fantasy writer of the same era, and they were friends and they would correspond. We have like their letters back and forth. C.S. Lewis was much more explicit and intentional. Mm-hmm. Like, Aslan is like Jesus, is meant to be Jesus.
Oh, really?
Right? Like, if you read Chronicles of Narnia through a Catholic lens, like, it's almost kind of like Catholic fan fiction. Kinda. Whereas Tolkien...
That's so weird.
Was very... Not to say that he did it unintentionally and would have been upset, because he's like, I didn't want to make it Catholic. His was a lot more, like... unconscious, I think, because of his upbringing. I believe his story is interesting. He was like an orphan, was kind of raised by like a local priest, I think, like, right? So my point is that, but put that aside. That's almost like the philosophical. I thought that was a big
part. Sorry.
No, it is a huge part. But I'm just saying, in contrast to something like Narnia, that was like very explicit, meant to be like this is meant to be like a parallel allegory.
Like this one is easier to read or see than Chronicles of Narnia.
Easier in what way? Like it's more accessible?
I've never seen Chronicles of Narnia as religious or religiously allegorical in any way.
Well, probably because it's trying so hard to be, it kind of goes back around and becomes like obfuscated, whereas with this just has deep fundamental truths about it. Yeah. All of this to say, the Catholic part's a huge part of it. And of course, I'm like a huge Catholic fanboy, so I'm not going to underplay this. But I'm going to put a pin in that. Mm-hmm. The reason why I brought this up, because we started talking about the medieval. Yes. His primary training, I believe, and Tolkien nerds out there know better than me, correct me in the comments or whatever, but he was coming at it, he was into languages. Mm-hmm. And not just languages functionally, but also what languages say about the culture or whatever. Mm. So he would just for fun make up fake languages and like build grammars, right? So
building grammar in a fake language. What?
Right? And then it kind of developed into like, I guess one of the languages that is now found in like the Middle Earth mythology.
Elven?
Maybe. He kind of built it out from there and it went outward. So I think, the idea, the framing device of the Lord of the Rings books, which obviously is not true, but like kind of the fun little framing device, is that these are ancient texts that have been discovered and translated into English. So the idea is that Middle Earth, unlike the Star Wars universe, which some people would disagree with, the Star Wars universe existed in all, like, they could not fly, in the Star Wars universe, Luke Skywalker could never fly to Earth. Like, in this universe, Earth doesn't exist. Like, there's two kinds of fantasy. There's the fantasy that exists in our universe, and there's, well, I guess maybe that's not true, because the whole thing is that it's in a galaxy far, far away. But,
I mean, does it matter?
What I'm saying is Middle Earth on our Earth, or is it like in another fantasy realm?
Oh, I thought it was different.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, is that's a question.
Well, actually, it could very well be Earth.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that like, is in the world, diegetically within the world of Lord of the Rings, is it in a separate realm, or is it an ancient period of our Earth, of our world, right? Like, do they live on a sphere? Like, I don't know. I don't know enough about the Middle Earth mythology. Or do they live on a flat Earth? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like I don't know if they exist in our, like in Kingdom Hearts, they don't live in our reality. Like, Sora could never, no matter where he flew, no matter how far he flew, if he lived to be 1,000,000 years old, he could never get here. Because our here doesn't exist in that reality, right? Where something like Harry Potter is in our reality. It is a variation of it, but it exists on Earth, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so talking about the medieval, even though it doesn't take place in the medieval period, it has those trappings of kind of like I'm really bad at like the different ages of civilization. Like, I don't want to say the Iron Age, but maybe it is the Iron Age. Like
What? Like,
my point is, it doesn't take place in the medieval period, but it has the trappings of like the technology. Like, no one's gonna pull up. No one's gonna pull up a. No one's gonna pull up a calculator, but they do have wheels and swords.
I think the use of swords
and catapults. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and even almost like industrial, like, because like they're burning the trees to make to burn the trees for fire to power like their factory.
Tall brick buildings.
Right. So my point. This is a real tangent that really doesn't matter, but. The point is that it's medieval-esque, but it doesn't take place in that period. That distinction's important. It doesn't take place in 1100 AD.
No.
Right?
People aren't getting the plague or anything.
All this to say, going back, I interrupted you. You like the medieval stuff. I don't really like it. That's why I didn't.
I don't know why, but I've always liked that or been intrigued by it. I mean, I remember in like fourth
Did you like the
grade,
King Arthur kind of mythology, like the Arthurian stuff? Like, because that's also never really appealed to me.
So, like, I remember in like fourth grade or something, I like got a book from the library. It was like this like 2-inch thick book about
like a tome.
About like the medieval era, and I was like, this is so crazy. And then Arthur and learning, and Archimedes, of course,
because you like Sword in the Stone.
Sword in the Stone. I like Sword in the Stone. So then that it's inspired the book, and then I don't know, went to a Renaissance festival and...
See, like, those things, like, I've never... I like them, but I don't feel compelled, like...
Always think about it. I mean, there's some...
I'm more interested in it now.
There's stuff, that comes up, like movies or whatever. So it's like, it's not, like, obscure, right?
I like the medieval period in a historical sense, but I've never cared... I've never been super interested in the aesthetic trappings of it. Like, because basically because Lord of the Rings is like the seminal fantasy work of the 20th century, basically when people think fantasy, they think of something like this. So like, when you do dungeon, like the typical Dungeons and Dragons is like, again, like medieval style weaponry and like...
Does anyone want to be friends so that we can play
Dungeons and Dragons? I know we never played it
because I've always wanted to play.
Well, Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of the mythology of D&D pulls from Middle Earth stuff, like orcs and elves and stuff. Because growing up, I thought elves, like I always was confused. I was like, what, the elves in this are so tall? I thought elves were small.
That's true,
right?
Because then there's the dwarves and the hobbits; they're small too. But wait, human-sized? Are they smaller than us?
Who, the hobbits?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the whole thing. Okay, so, like, in the live-action movies, they are, like, they always use forced perspective. So, like, technically,
because I know Gandalf is tall, but, like,
no, but, like,
seems like a tall man.
No, like, Frodo probably, the top of his head is probably at, like, Frodo's, like, belly button. Like, they're basically, an adult hobbit is, like, the size of, like, maybe, like, a 9-year-old child. In terms of height, right? Okay. So... Okay. So when you watch, so what was really cool with the live action movies is that they, instead of just doing it with like compositing, like computer composites work, it was all forced perspective. So it's like they're actually just standing closer and farther away to the camera, but they position like the props to make it so your eyes get confused.
Yeah.
It's like those like a museum of illusions where people do the pictures and it's like they'll like walk across the room in a straight line but get really small. But it's not, they're not actually walking in a straight line. It only looks like that from the camera's point of view.
Yeah.
But in actuality, they're actually walking farther away from the camera.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, Elijah is like, what, maybe 5'10" or something? 5'8"?
He's probably like average height.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like a regular
The point is that Ian McKellen's not this towering giant.
Really?
I don't think so. He's probably tall, but he's not like... Gandalf looks like he's like 7 feet tall.
I know. But
Anyway,
I don't know. Something about this and like the fantastical element, like I don't know. I'm
He's
just,
Ian
like,
McKellen's 5'11".
Okay.
We should probably focus. Listeners, you can't see, but I'm putting my hands up as if to signal to stop talking because I feel like we're getting way off track.
Seems like
off
you're
of
praising
this.
the Lord.
I am also It is Sunday.
Anyways, I
all
just
to
wanted
say,
to
just talk about the mythology.
That I like the medieval and the fantastical type
Mm-hmm.
of situation going on, and magic in
Yeah.
general, just because it's cool, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think with this book was first. So The Hobbit was released. I think it was 1937.
Oh wow.
And then the first Lord of the Rings book, I think, was released like 53 or something, 1953. So, this was kind of new because again, we hadn't really had it wasn't a common fiction genre.
It
was something. It was
so
part
weird.
I believe. I could be wrong, but again, it's like we had legend, but they weren't like someone sat down and wrote a story. It was like cultural, oral tradition.
Like, imagine just like standing in a bread line during the Great Depression, reading about fucking orcs and elves. Like, it's so weird to think that, like,
Those two things lined up, like
yeah, it's like when
Yeah.
it's like weird that you like know that like Martin Luther King Jr. and like Anne Frank lived at the same time.
Like they were born the same
like,
year. Yeah.
Like there is like overlap. That seems strange. It's like
or
30s.
Or it's even weirder when like there will be someone who if you like live to be 80 today, and when you were 10 you talk to someone who was 80 when you were 10, that means you're getting information about like the 1870s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like this weird crossover.
Oh yeah, it's even in a different decade or
Right.
century.
Um
But I guess also that could be a skewed view in terms of like culture, right? So like 50s B movies, like, you know, that's kind of where 50s 60s is kind of where you get like, you know, the Blob and things like that. So there's
a lot more science fiction.
more fantastical things, whereas like, you know, you don't really imagine some child like living on a farm
Reading
like
The Hobbit?
reading The Hobbit. I don't know. Maybe they did.
Or if they had a local library, then they may have.
Yeah,
But-
or just like
and I also don't know, because again, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know what the journey of its popularity in the United States was,
yeah,
because it may have been delayed. It may have been kind of been delayed almost.
because he was what, English.
Yes, he was a British writer.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's our experience with Middle Earth. Very interesting. Something that kind of eluded me for most of my life. But I'm happy. Better late than never.
Do you like it now?
I like want to learn more about. Like I want to read the Lord of the Rings books, but honestly, I can admit this about myself. I'm not I'm not the best reader. Like, because I have ADHD, I get very distracted while I'm reading, and then like I'll read a paragraph. By reading, I mean like I'll acknowledge each word in my brain.
Yeah.
But like I start thinking about something else, and I'll like read a page and go, I don't know what I don't remember anything that just happened.
Classic.
Right? So I tend to not read a lot because it's hard for me. I get distracted very easily. Not like distracted by doing something else, but just like while I'm literally reading, like I just read it like word for word, but I'm not like putting the sentences together like in my brain. Like so, but I do want to read. I want to learn more about the mythology because I know why this all started. This conversation.
You know, maybe 6, because the Tudor age era is an extension of that. It feels like, you know, like of the.
It's like the tail end between medieval
type
into
of
like the
thing,
Renaissance and
you
Enlightenment
know.
era. Sure.
And there's so much drama. It's like reality TV.
I
Oh my
know.
god.
But I think this whole thing started because we were like, why do I like it? Or what changed?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, the reason why I like this is kind of like Star Wars and Dune. Because of Tolkien's approach of such thorough world building, it feels like you really are peering into another world. I know that's so often like an advertising buzzword, like with any kind of like action fantasy thing. Like,
But does
you're
that
like,
feel exclusionary?
well, let me tell you this. Let me give you an example. Like, think about when you go to Disney World, right? Disney World is so meticulously designed, like you feel like you're in this place. But they don't always, like if you go around something, it might just be like a flat
Yeah.
Like I remember we were talking about the Haunted Mansion and how they have like the facade.
I still don't understand.
And you were like, wait, so we're not actually going in that? And I was like, no, it's just a facade, right? Because why would you build something that no one's going to see, right? But with something like Star Wars and Tolkien and Middle-earth and then something like Dune, is that, like, if you wonder something about the universe, chances are there's an answer. That someone has, that George Lucas or a writer or Tolkien, like, has written about.
Yeah.
That exists not to serve just the story, but, like, exists just to give further texture to the world. Whereas, like, with Harry Potter, it feels like that thing of, like, it's just the facades. Like, if you peer around it, you realize, like, the only stuff that has been conceived has been the stuff that's necessary to tell the story.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas with Middle-earth, like, there is a rich history that was never in any of the main books that Tolkien just, like, published as, like... I think after he died, they basically just published, like, a book of just, like, his writings. Like, he basically, like, wrote out lore of, like, here's what happened, and then this thing happened, this thing... That did not influence necessarily the plot of The Lord of the Rings. I think that's what gravitates me to it, is that it feels like a cohesive, fully fledged world that exists independently of my experience with it. Right? The way the real world exists. Like, the world exists independent of me experiencing it. Whereas something like Harry Potter feels a little flat. That the only stuff that's there is what is needed to be there for the story. Or it's just there for the books, right? Or like the story itself, right? So
I suppose so.
So that's why I really gravitate to things like Star Wars and Middle-earth and Dune. Because it's like, I want to learn more about, like, the history as if it's, like, real history. Whereas, like, I really have zero interest in learning about what happened before Harry Potter showed up at Hogwarts. Like, I really have zero interest. Right? You know what I mean?
Just a boy
living under a staircase.
Stairs.
So we've belabored this a little bit. Why don't we talk about this movie specifically?
Oh.
If that's...
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Right? So talking about the background of this. So the film was produced and directed by Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass of Rankin Bass Productions in New York City. When interviewed for the film, Rankin declared that he would add nothing to the story that was not in the original. He explained that he was able to make the film because The Hobbit was still in the public domain at the time, despite claims to the contrary from the copyright holders. So maybe it's no longer in the public domain. I'm not sure. That's a good question, actually. I don't know.
That's so weird how that, like, influences major things. Like Mickey Mouse and I think most notably now Mickey Mouse, but most notably beforehand is It's a Wonderful Life.
That is no longer in the public domain, but that's the reason why it became popular.
That's why. Now it's like a fucking Christmas classic.
When it was kind of forgotten, like,
and
less than a year after it came out.
Referenced in other movies.
It's one of the most important films ever made.
Yeah, but it was just some shitty movie that they, was out.
It was just free, so they just played it on TV.
Yeah, just they played it a bunch or whatever. They were like, oh,
it's free, so it's all just upside. Yeah,
it's just crazy.
I wrote this in the background, but I also wrote in the trivia, but I'll just say it now. So I did not know this. The Hobbit was animated by Topcraft in Tokyo. So that was the thing with Rankin and Bass. A lot of the animation was in Japan. That they outsourced it. And that was a now defunct Japanese animation studio whose animation team reformed as Studio Ghibli under Hayao Miyazaki.
Oh, wow. Crazy.
Which is interesting because it's not very well done, but I think it's just because it's cheap. I think it was a low budget. But I will say, I wrote this in my notes, the backgrounds are stunning. Because this is if you don't know a lot about animation, this is what you would call cell animation, where you make a set background and then you get what are called cells, like these kind of almost like shiny, I don't know what material it is, like almost like cellophane. And you put the animation of the character on the cell and put the cell is clear except for the part you painted on. So you put the cell onto the background so you don't have to animate the background every time. You just basically replace the cells one by one, take the picture, right?
Yeah.
The backgrounds are stunning paintings. But then the actual animation of the characters is very low budget. In terms of the quality, the detail, the movement, it's very, you could see that it's like a TV special from the 70s. While Topcraft, which is the animation studio, while they produced the animation overseas, the concept artwork was completed at the Rankin Bass studio under Rankin's direction. Rhode Island artist
Oh my God.
Lester Abrams, I got really excited, did the initial designs for most of the characters. That's what you would do, because I guess I always was confused by this, but I guess because if you're a good artist, you can replicate other designs. So like someone might just do the designs, and then someone else does the work of like animating those designs in the different positions. Rankin had seen Abrams' illustrations to an excerpt from The Hobbit in Children's Digest. So I guess this Rhode Island artist did some illustration of The Hobbit in some magazine, and Rankin was like,
Hey,
do that, but for a movie. And Lester Abrams was like, me, a humble Rhode Island artist? I guess I have to.
He was like, you got a check? Okay, cool.
You got some money? So what did we think of this, right? Like, so taking everything we talked about with Middle Earth, taking that into account, what do we think of this portrayal of it? Because again, ostensibly, unless there was a couple, I think there may have been maybe one or two other things, but they were short films, so I didn't include it. I believe this is ostensibly the first on-screen depiction of Middle Earth, of this mythology in this world.
It goes pretty hard. It doesn't, I'll say, it doesn't really pussyfoot around. It really, like...
In what way?
Like, it's... I don't know. Like, it just tells the story. Like, it is just how it is. And it's not like...
It's not like holding your hand.
It's not like holding your hand to introduce you to such a fantastical world. It's like, we're just in it, you know?
Like I was saying, it just feels like a fully fledged world that you're just thrown into, as opposed to like all of this has been set up for you, the viewer. You know what I mean? It's also interesting because again, because of the first, like, because the Peter Jackson films are so iconic, we have like very specific ideas of like what Gollum looks like, what a Hobbit should look like. So when we watch this, it's kind of like they haven't determined that yet. Yeah. So again, we get Gollum as like this weird lizard fish creature.
Is that how he's depicted? Like, how is he?
No, well, it's not a picture book. That's the thing. So it's
no,
like,
I know. Surely he's described, no?
I guess, but it might be only so much that like both versions fulfill the written description, but like it's not going to describe everything. Like it's exactly this hue of color. Like, you know what I mean? It's all. Yeah. Though I could be wrong. Maybe this was a deviation. People were like, "That's nothing like the book." I have no idea.
Well, I
don't remember. Even though I read The Hobbit, I don't remember.
Well, I would like to learn about the original things and those deviations, because, I mean, there are quite a few, right? In that, it's just interesting to know, right? So like the Hobbits, for example, aren't they? They're depicted differently, like in the book, like they're more hairy, and they're like smoking weed or something. I don't know. They look different,
I do know
right?
that in the Lord of the Rings, Frodo is meant to be like 40. But I think the Peter Jackson ones, they made him a little younger to make it seem more like a young hero.
Yeah, or just like different little things. I don't know. That could be funny to see. Like, oh, this was this way. Why did you change it? You know, like, thank you for, like, you know, being a huge step in the history of, like, motion capture, and, you know, making this creepy little guy. But why was he not a fish guy? You know, it's
exactly.
Like, just different.
Well, after
things.
this, I'll get my Hobbit book out. You can read it.
We'll read. We'll watch.
You've been reading that. You've been reading that Henry VIII book for about 4 years. I'm not one to talk. I have that World War II book that I started reading about a year ago,
oh my God.
and I haven't really
years.
picked it up in like months. So
I think I started it in Maine. That was in 22.
Or when we were living in Maine for a summer.
Yeah. Oh man. But see, medieval kind of.
Yeah. But so what did you, so I guess maybe let's take a break from talking about Middle Earth. Like, did you enjoy this? Like, just like as a movie, like.
Yeah, I thought it was cute.
It has like that weird Rankin and Bass charm of like being kind of, it being entertaining, but also being kind of weird.
Yeah.
And awkward.
Yeah, you were saying that.
Like, just like the way people talk or move or whatever, or like the pacing is weird, like. Like they have the same, like, because I've seen so many of their Christmas films so many times. Like I see the trappings of like the cut to commercial where like the music will swell and the character will just kind of like stare blankly and then it'll just like kind of awkwardly fade to black. But like it's just like it has like those weird trademarks of like Rankin and Bass projects.
So all of their movies were like specifically made to be on TV.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they may have made like one or two theatrical films, but this was not it. This was a TV movie. And of course it's also a musical. An awful musical, if I might add. It's so
You're obsessed with that song. I don't even remember the song.
I'm not obsessed with it. It actually annoys me
You're
greatly.
obsessed with how.
So
much
this is one of my
hatred
trivia
you have.
bits that the only original song lyrics in the movie are those to the Greatest Adventure and other sections where that melody is used. All other songs are directly from the book as written by J.R.R. Tolkien or adaptations of what he wrote in verse form. Because in the book he'll write like
That man was writing songs.
Well, there was no music. It was just written.
He wrote a book. He made a language, and he's writing songs. Oh my god.
He also translated Beowulf at one point just for fun. Or doing like a modern translation of it. So the Greatest Adventure is like the one original song. And it's awful. It's so boilerplate 70s, like it's so bad. And the reason why I keep singing is because they kept using it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But only doing it for like a verse with no resolution. Like they'll be like, the greatest adventure is one you can't miss. And then it feels like it would keep going. And then, but it wouldn't. Like they would just stop. And like the scene would keep going on.
We had things to do.
But like the lyrics are so like boilerplate, like, you know, if you believe, like it's like so, just like so generic and awful. Which sucks because Rankin and Bass music sometimes is like slaps.
Is this true?
Like the psychedelic song in Santa Claus is Coming to Town that she sings.
Oh my gosh.
You know, basically every song from that movie is great.
There'll be no more toy making
To the king, right? So yeah, it has like this weird stilted charm. Like the characters move as if they're stop motion, like they move all stiff.
Yeah.
Again, because I think it's when you don't have a lot of budget, you can only afford to
is.
make so many frames, so you can't have super detailed movements.
It is though, technically, right?
Technically,
Because
all
of the cells?
technically, well, that's the interesting little caveat. Technically, all animation is stop motion because both involve taking a picture and then changing it and taking another picture. But by stop motion, I just mean three-dimensional figurines.
No, I know.
So because of that, usually that's very stiff because especially in the 60s, they didn't have like green screen. Because now when they make like Paranorman or Coraline, they have technology where they can have it attached to like a rig covered by a green thing. So they can have them do more interesting movements. That would be harder to do back then. Like, let's say there's like a ball in the air. Like, that's hard to do, like a bouncing ball.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, how do you do it in midair without showing like a little thing? What they probably did was have like a little fishing wire that was invisible on the old film stock.
Yeah.
But now they can just have like a rig covered in like a green casing and then just remove it in post-production, right?
Movie magic is so cool.
But my point is that this is hand-drawn and it's still stiff. So I don't know.
I don't know.
I think it's just because it costs more to draw more frames. So, you know, that's more time spent, more artists, more, you know, so it's very... What did you think of the voice acting? Also very Rankin and Bass, just very strange and just kind of whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to like shift my mindset because like me, modern version, seeing the movies and whatnot, is like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's like whatever. But like I'm trying to think of it like watching it in
For the first time. Yeah.
I think it was very exciting.
Why was legendary director John Huston the voice of Gandalf? He's also an actor, but
I don't know. It was exciting. It was kind of scary. I didn't really like the way that Gandalf was drawn. Like he looked kind of very pointy, like Winter.
Like the Winter Warlock and
Yeah, the Winter Warlock.
They could have very well used that as a reference because they're just like,
They
hey, let's pull
really
up the let's pull up the reference model.
And then also like Bilbo also looks strange.
I do not like the design of the hobbits. He looks really creepy.
Like he doesn't like fit in with the style.
Every
of the
character
others.
looks like they're from a different cartoon. Like they're all like they look like all different character design principles.
Yeah. It's just
Like the humans
strange.
versus the dwarves versus Gandalf versus Bilbo. Like everyone just looks like they're from a different cartoon.
Oh, the human. Yeah.
Um.
I don't know. Something's weird with Bilbo.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's not much to really say about this because it feels like it really feels like a Spark Notes version of The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Both in terms of events, but also like I feel like the Hobbit book, while very simple, especially compared to what came after, like it's very thematically simple. I think there is still something to sink your teeth into thematically. This feels like there's like nothing to. It's just kind of like a bunch of stuff happens and then it's like over. Like, don't hoard wealth. You know, like because they all go to war. 'Cause, like we want the whole thing.
Well, you know what was cool was seeing Moria like
In the flashback, yeah.
like functioning,
Like not
and
abandoned,
not like
yeah.
like a.
I believe it's Moria, the
ghost
Mines of
town.
Moria, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of looked the same.
Because it had those tall pillars
Yeah.
that go up like really high up, like they're in like the cave underground or whatever.
Yeah, and they had like the space for making the swords or whatever. Yeah. Oh. Well, something that maybe you can shed some light on is I know this is The Hobbit and not Lord of the Rings, but when Gandalf came in and was like, "Hey, here's this band of like 13 dwarves, you know, you're gonna go with them and go on this adventure to take back their town."
He's basically voluntold,
And-
right? You know what
well,
that means?
Yeah, but it's also like I was like, "Oh, this is familiar." Like
They have met before.
you know, well, no, I just mean like in terms of like getting a group of people and then going on an adventure, right? That's what they do in the second movie, in the first movie,
The Fellowship of the Ring.
Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, they get people together, and I was like oh, this seems very familiar. So like, do they?
Is that paralleled
Are they
intentionally?
the same story? Like Bilbo goes with a group of dwarves and like fights a dragon, and then like Frodo gets with the band of people and then goes to Mordor. Like, is it like the same story?
No, and here's why.
I don't know enough to.
Well, I mean, I think you know. I think you do know enough. And the way I'm about to put it in a way that you have all the pieces to figure this. I think to arrive at this conclusion. The short answer is no, because for starters, Bilbo is kind of forced to go on this adventure that is basically selfishly motivated.
Yeah.
And it's from the start, this big group. Whereas Frodo...
Oh, because he'll get paid, right? Cause
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas with Frodo, the group forms later. Like, he's already left the Shire.
Yeah.
Because they formed the group to protect him. And Frodo gets nothing out of it. It's purely selfless.
Oh,
It's
yes.
purely...
Bilbo has always been depicted as kind of selfish and miserly.
A little, right? But Frodo, it's complete selflessness. Because basically they're like, no one can take this ring because anyone will be tempted by it. But basically because hobbits are... The implication is hobbits are dumb.
Dumb?
Or not dumb, but simple.
I thought they were pure of heart.
No, it's that they're just like very simple creatures, right? Like a hobbit can't really lust for power the same way like a human would, I guess. So like,
Yeah.
the idea is that like Frodo basically takes on the burden. It's his cross to bear. This is where it becomes very Catholic, right?
Yeah.
He takes on the cross, so to speak, because he's the only one that can do it, right? So that's why it's very different. It is not, but not just thematically different, but also just the sequence of events is very different.
I just mean like story structure wise, I suppose.
Like by
Just,
this logic, you could
like,
say
with a group. I don't know.
you could say, well, because they're both adventures. Like, well, I mean, there's thousands of adventure stories, you know.
I don't
so
know. It just seemed a little similar. I was like, hey, we've seen this before. Oh, just kidding. There's more people.
now I just want to watch the Peter Jackson ones. But now we have to wait. We have a couple other ones to get through and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I really don't have a lot to say about this. It's like it's functional.
Oh wait, speaking of worlds and if it could be right, I think this is kind of it could be seen as like maybe like an alternate reality, and this is just like very far back. So
we're gonna have to go watch a YouTube video, like History of
like Earth. What happened. We know 600 whatever the people were doing, right? There weren't fairies and shit, but in this world there were, right? And that kind of makes sense because there's just humans now, right? So I suppose in this world we would have eventually taken over everyone, but also you just reminded me that there are people in this. There are humans.
Yeah, there are humans in the Peter Jackson movies too. Aragorn is a human. I think he's half elf, but he's still there are humans.
I guess so. Anyway, so it makes sense that
the kings of Gondor, they're all here. Sean Bean.
Oh yes,
is a human. There's lots of humans. The guy who eats the food really aggressively.
Yes.
He's to show his decadence, like the king's like the uncle.
Yeah, the guy. Yeah.
Because the father is so overwhelmed by grief or something, like he's like.
Yeah.
Or I forget what he's doing. Or no, he's the father.
I don't like that guy. The guy.
You're not supposed to like him. Remember the guy who like catches on fire later, and he's like, ah.
Is that the one who gets like possessed or whatever?
No, that's a different guy. But anyway.
I don't like.
There are humans.
I don't like that guy. He's like the uncle of the two blonde guys, the girl and the boy, and they ride horses. Yes.
And then he's like, Gandalf, you have no power here. And then he turns it to Gandalf the White, and then he's like, oh! It's so funny because he's like Gandalf the Grey. He's like, I'm not Gandalf the Grey. I'm Gandalf the White.
What's that about?
Because he dies and comes back to life, remember?
I know, but...
Spoilers!
Okay,
Another Jesus parallel.
He's just changing colors?
Well, again, we're really jumping the gun, but there's a whole, like... I don't want to say a whole study, because maybe that's that's overstating it, but there's a lot of analyses looking at Lord of the Rings and kind of looking at Gandalf, Frodo, and Aragorn as, like, the three roles that Jesus plays as both, like... priest and I forget the other two, but like you know what I mean, like the different kind of aspects of Jesus, like the kingly part, the priestly part. Yeah, so there's a lot of
what is it? Tolkien cloth.
Tolkien cloth?
No, it's something cloth. It's with a T. Something.
Oh, the special cloth he wears?
That they put over.
Oh, the mithril.
Is
the
it
mithril something.
Okay.
I forget.
Mithril something. Whatever. The sheet that they put over Jesus.
Oh, are they talking about in Lord of the Rings, the special armor he wears so he doesn't get stabbed?
No, what I'm saying...
Oh, the Shroud of Turin.
The Shroud of Turin, yes.
The Shroud of Tolkien.
I'm saying that the color change, right? He's now in all white, like, you think purity, like heaven, angels, what have you.
Yeah.
And,
exactly.
Jesus was also laid to rest and, in the white sheet, and then he said, I'm not sitting here.
That's so true.
He said, you know what? I have risen. Peace out, guys. I did my job. See you later.
Smell you later. Do you want to hear some trivia?
Sure.
You weirdo. Okay.
I just love making Jesus like a relatable dude. Like
you don't have to make. He already was a relatable dude.
But just like saying it in like modern terms or whatever.
Deuce. I gotta say he could be relatable, but I don't know if that is. I don't know if he would have such a cavalier, just like, yo, leave it. Bye. Figure it out. Bye.
I don't know. I don't even have an example. But there have been. Oh, what was the one where he was like, "It's okay. No one's asking you to do that." Oh,
and he's like, I will die on the cross for you.
It's like, yeah. It's like, dude, Jesus, chill. Like, no one's asking you to do that. What are you talking about?
Dude, would you like to hear some trivia?
Sure.
Instead of your weird humanizing of Jesus into like some weird dude bro.
He was.
Drinking wine. He was fully human, fully divine, and fully human. Okay.
Fully human.
The Arkenstone, which is an heirloom of Thorin's dynasty and the most important treasure that he wishes to recover, isn't included in this film, so neither is the surrounding storyline of Bilbo stealing the Arkenstone and giving it to the elves. This event causes noticeable friction between the two of them in the book, which is explained in the movie as Thorin's irritation at Bilbo's lack of understanding for war, something that does not happen in the book at all.
Who is that? The dwarf man?
Thorin is like the main dwarf, yeah.
Okay.
So that was something that he kind of added for this whole like Bilbo's diatribe of like, I don't understand war. Like he's like a communist. Like we can all share it. Like there's enough for everybody. And Thorin's like, it doesn't matter if there's enough. It's ours in principle.
Whose is it?
The dwarves. The idea is that it was no, it's the gold stolen by Smaug.
No, I know, but like, how did they come to happen? Did they make all of this? Like.
Maybe they mined it. Maybe they turned Maybe they turned materials into the gold, into the treasure,
stuff, right?
Or maybe they got the treasure by selling the stuff from the mines. I don't know. We're gonna have to watch it
because they had to get it somehow, and now in order for it to be stolen, if they didn't have it, then there would be nothing to be stolen.
It's so true, honey.
Also, I know because of the movies, I think Smaug was white. And so I was expecting him to be white in this movie, but he was like.
They make him
red.
almost like a lion dragon, like he's like a cat.
Yeah, very furry. Yeah.
He's very feral look, or felinous, or canine. Like he looks like a mammal. He doesn't look like a lizard.
Does. Yeah, and then like his like little.
He doesn't look like a reptile.
Puffs,
His
dorsal. What is that? I don't know.
Usually, like those like
his
lizards.
Dorsal fin is.
It's like fur. Yeah, it's like fur. Here's another piece of trivia. It's not so much trivia, but it's kind of funny. But it kind of gives some context. So Gandalf at the end of this movie says that members of Bilbo's family not yet born may one day understand the ring. Which is so, because when
so on the nose.
So, because when Tolkien writes The Hobbit, he doesn't necessarily know that he's going to write this other story. But in this, The Lord of the Rings obviously had already come out. So like.
I thought The Lord of the Rings came out before The Hobbit. No?
I told you. I literally walked you through. The Hobbit came out in the 30s and The Lord of the Rings came out in the 50s.
Something's happening.
Something's happening is that the Peter Jackson movies did the Lord of the Rings movies, and then later they were like, let's make a movie of The Hobbit.
Okay, anyways, he didn't.
Because Hobbit's not like required reading. So it's not like you have to, it's not like Fellowship of the Ring is The Hobbit 2. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that's why you're getting confused, because they made the movies like in reverse.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, but when they made this, obviously the Lord of the Rings had come out, so they put a thing like, and Bilbo was like, I don't understand this ring. He's like, yes, but maybe one day someone in your family who's not yet born, their name may start with an F, will understand. Like it's just very it's very clumsy.
It may rhyme with Toto.
Exactly. Anyway, so Gandalf says at the end of this that someone in his family will one day understand the ring, and that the story is not really ending, but just beginning. That's what he says, right? Yeah. These lines were not in the book. These lines were not in the book, nor was there any indication that there was any more to the ring than mere invisibility, right? Mm-hmm. In The Hobbit, like in 1937, you're reading it, there's no implication that it's like literally the source of the devil's power. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
then why does he think Gollum wanted it?
Because Gollum was just obsessed with it. I don't know.
Just because he's weird?
Yeah, he's weird. Everyone in The Hobbit's weird.
So he was like, oh, look, this perfectly random, perfectly normal ring with no magical abilities.
I don't know. At the time the original book was written, there was no intention to connect The Hobbit with the Tolkien legend drum, which includes the Silmarillion and The Lord of the Rings, which hadn't been written yet. So I think the Tolkien legendrum is like the mythology of it all. Mm-hmm. And the Silmarillion is like almost like I don't know if it was published after his death. It may have been. Basically, it's like a collection of like lore. It's basically a lore dump of this universe, mm-hmm. of like the ancient history of this universe, of the origin of like the being. It's like the Book of Genesis. Almost, right? However, in 1977, it was well known that the ring Bilbo found and the events he participated in were a prelude to a much larger story. So that was kind of funny that it was very like, yeah, something else might happen with this ring. Anyway.
I'm going to have to look into that situation because I don't know.
I'm going to have to do some research.
I don't understand. If Gollum is so obsessed with it, you would think it would be close to chest, but he just like
left it on the shoreline.
He just left it on the shore. I mean, like what you said, I understand what you said. It's like his cave, but still, I feel like that's a little bit irresponsible for something you've literally transformed into a fish man for.
That might also, I don't remember, that might be different from the book. Maybe the book, it makes more sense. Maybe, like, you know what I mean? I don't know if this was something that they changed. Because another thing they changed I was really disappointed to see is the goblin thing. Because the whole thing in the book is to show Bilbo's cleverness. Because he's not smart, but he's clever. Right? Like, he's not smart the way Gandalf is smart, but he's clever. He knows how to get out of a sticky situation. I forget what he's doing, but he basically, like, tricks the goblins into arguing with one another all night before eating them. So by the time the sunrise comes, they turn to stone. Whereas in this, I think Gandalf turns them into stone. I think.
Yeah, or, like, he, like, makes the sunrise?
Or something, I don't know. But you see my point? So my point is that maybe the whole thing about Gollum leaving the ring on maybe that isn't how it is in the book. I don't remember.
Okay.
Bust it out.
Because in the movie, it's like through the crack. I think that's why, right?
In the Peter Jackson movie, when they show the flashback at the beginning of the first one.
Because he's living in like a cave.
I think he just finds it, and Gollum is like, my precious!
No, I know, but I think because Gollum dropped it in one of the cracks, no? I
don't think so. Because how does Bilbo get it? It's not really important. We'll see. It'll become very apparent.
Because he's in the cave to get the dragon.
We'll have to see. The ring is not part of the treasure with the dragon.
No, I know. He just picks it up along the way. Yeah,
Anywho, here's another piece of trivia for you. There are no female characters depicted anywhere in the film.
What?
Except for the spiders, which are female or voiced by females. Even the crowd scenes in Lake Town consist entirely of men.
I did notice the Lake Town men.
And maybe it's because I'm a man. I did not realize there was no women until I read that. I was like, shit, I guess you're right. There were no women.
Yeah, I didn't. I just read this and I was like, wait, really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you want to hear some critical reception?
Yes.
Okay, so on Rotten Tomatoes has a 71%. No critical consensus, though. There was no consensus.
Okay, 71. That's
probably just there weren't enough reviews for them to be like, okay, this warrants it. Right? John J. O'Connor wrote in the New York Times that, quote, Rankin and Bass Productions have now carefully translated The Hobbit into film. The result is a curiously eclectic, but filled with nicely effective moments, period. The drawings frequently suggest strong resemblance to non-Tolkien characters. The goblins could have stepped out of a Maurice Sendak book. Maurice Sendak is like the guy behind like Where the Wild Things Are and stuff, books like that. But the dragon and Gollum, the riddle aficionado, brings some clever original touches. Whatever its flaws, this television version of The Hobbit warrants attention, end quote. Criticism primarily focused on adaptation issues, including the unfamiliar style of artwork used by the Japanese-American co-production team. Because if you think about it, at this point, most Americans were, like, American cartoons looked a certain way.
What were some?
This looks a little more anime. A little. It doesn't look anime, but it in terms of, like, a little closer.
What were some?
Well,
I don't know. What
cartoons? Well, there was, like, Disney. Like, 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone is, like, the 60s and 70s. Like, Aristocats. And, and then on TV, it's, like, very low, but like Super Friends or something like in the 60s and 70s. So, some Tolkien fans questioned the appropriateness of repackaging the material as a family film for a very young audience. The scholar Douglas A. Anderson called the adaptation "quote unquote" exercerable in the introduction to his book, The Annotated Hobbit. I believe that means like it's not very enjoyable. Although he did not elaborate, and a few critics said it was confusing for those not already familiar with the plot. So if you don't already have like a sense of what's going on, you know.
Yeah, because like we said, it throws you right in.
But you can only do that if you present a really fully fleshed out world. But this is so thin that you don't. They don't give me the fully fleshed Middle Earth.
But so there's that, but like knowing. Then it's like, oh, that's why Gollum is, like, being weird and, like, talking that way and stuff. Because, like, without that context, you're just like, what the fuck is he saying?
Why is he talking like that?
like, what is he saying?
You know, I would have been eaten because I suck at riddles.
Oh.
You would think I'm really good at riddles, but I never, because I always look at it on its face. So I never see, I'm awful at riddles. Like, awful.
It's, like, always something so obvious, but it's, like, you never, like, what?
Yeah.
Like, black and white and red all over? a newspaper.
I'm like, God damn it, that's a pun. Can't we just call it a pun and move on?
Yeah, I don't know. But also, what was up with that? Is he into riddles? I don't remember him doing riddling in the movie.
At least in The Hobbit.
Interesting. He lost his affinity for
Maybe
riddles.
he doesn't have an affinity. Maybe they were just like, this is the only fair way to decide if I'm gonna eat you or not. Like, maybe he was just like, you know what? Riddles exist. Let's use these riddles as, like, a way to...
But then it was so silly because, like, he doesn't just go upon his day. Like, he then does exactly what Bilbo wanted him to do. So then Bilbo gets exactly what he wanted.
Because he's tricked. Because Bilbo's clever.
Like, why did Gollum go out the cave? Like, why did he go?
Because he was looking. Because he was like, that Hobbit stole my ring.
Oh. Okay.
But he didn't realize he was just there invisible.
And then he just followed him.
So Bilbo just followed it. That's the whole... That's what you're supposed to glean from this, is that Bilbo's clever, but has never had the chance to exercise that cleverness, I guess, is like the whole point. So he gets to come back with a little bit of street cred, like, yeah, I went on a big adventure. Whatever.
It was weird how, like, why did the spiders not get him? There were like a few things where I was
He's like, I shall call you Sting! And then that shows up in Lord of the Rings. He gets the sword.
Yes.
And he's like, I named it Sting. Here you go. So we get the origin story.
But there were some times where I was like, oh, that's very story-like. Like, it seems like why would everyone else have a problem and then him not have a problem? Like, why would the goblins want to eat everyone except him? Or, like, why would the spiders wrap everyone up except him? You know what I'm saying?
It's very, it's a little convenient.
That, I was like, But
this was a little, again, it's not a very great film, but it's fine. The science fiction author Bayard Searles criticized the adaptation, calling it a quote-unquote abomination, and an attempt that had quote-unquote failed miserably. He singled out the quality of animation, the omission of key plot points such as Bjorn and the Arkenstone, and the soundtrack, which I also did not like the soundtrack. And that's a thing we'll see. Well, we'll hopefully see going forward. I don't know if I'll be able to glean a lot of it from my research, but like, we love the Peter Jackson movies, but you have to remember, Lord of the Rings is like a revered foundational 20th century text.
yeah.
So there's been a lot of academic study.
Oh.
So to some people, the Peter Jackson movies
Really? Wow.
are like the watered down experience. And like lose a lot of like the literary or thematic complexity of like...
Yes, I suppose. Yes.
Right? So it's weird because it's like, for us, like Lord of the Rings is almost like, for a movie, very dense. Like, it almost feels like you're reading a book, like how much information and stuff.
Even the regular ones.
So I'm saying this is
Even
kind
if
of
you don't do extended.
So you might be going, well, why would this guy feel so strongly calling this an abomination? Like, that's why. Because like the texts are so foundational and revered.
Well, because he's a science fiction writer, so he like has more of an in, you know. Like he knows what it takes to create such a world, and so like them not doing, what did he say? Or them trying to mimic that, I guess, didn't work. I don't know.
Yeah. Unsuccessful for him. Do you want to hear some modern reaction?
Sure.
So on Letterboxd, it has a 3.25 out of 5. So a net positive. It's over the 3 hump. Here's some funny reviews I found. Matt Loves Movies. I feel like I know all about him now. Matt Loves Movies writes, Gandalf literally appears out of nowhere when Bilbo is smoking that otherworldly Shire folk longleaf Zaza.
What the fuck?
He's just smoking. That's the thing. The hobbits love their weed, their pipes and stuff. I'd love to smoke a pipe. I feel like that would be fun. I would really feel like a British academic. Like, yeah, exactly.
I'd like one that blows bubbles.
Yeah, no, they don't blow bubbles. It's like you put the tobacco in it.
I know.
Oh my god. Mike Jin writes, love the feeling of watching a children's movie as an adult that you know would have absolutely ruined your shit as a bitch ass little kid.
Yes.
Like, watching as an adult, you're like, if I watched this as a kid, I'd be freaked the fuck out.
Those spiders were scary. And the goblins were kind of
The goblins were really scary because they had that weird, like, Japanese anime, like, hyper detail to it. Like, it was like...
Wasn't there, like, one point where it said it was like Winnie the Pooh? They were
like the heffalumps kind of like, yeah, it was like
huge, and like it was just like in this blank space.
Like
It was just like
an abstract
darkness.
void. Yeah,
Like, there's
exactly.
Just like this void of darkness and this giant goblin.
Who's like, yeah. Brodsky writes, none of the dwarves were sexy, and unfortunately I am a woman, so there really wasn't anything for me here. Fair enough.
There you go.
All right, Viviana. Favorite part? Scene, character, actor, line?
Oh my frick, I don't even know.
You just loved it that much.
I don't know. I suppose in the whole thing as a appreciation for the adaptation of it.
They gave it the good old college try.
Yeah, not so much, on its face, just for what it is. I'm like, it's very cute.
Nice.
It's very helpful. Thank you for putting it into a, sizable.
A little bite-sized, an introduction.
Yeah, so we don't.
Baby's first Hobbit. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of your introduction to Middle Earth.
So we don't have to read the entire library,
Exactly. And I really want to read the books, but I've never been into audiobooks because I have this is like a
really?
tangent. No, well, I was gonna try not to open the can of worms, but because you said really, now I have to open it. I have on principle, I'm against audiobooks.
Yeah.
Because it supposes, and maybe this is ableist, but I don't mean it to be. It supposes that, like to me, I'm very into like the study of different mediums as like a philosophical concept of like what makes the mediums different and like how they are used to explore different ideas and stories and stuff.
Yeah.
So to me, the idea of an audiobook is to diminish the difference between the medium of literature and the medium of like recorded audio, right? Because if it's like watching a filmed version of a stage play, like it is functional, but it should not be like a substitute for like, oh, I don't need to go to theater because I can just watch a filmed version of it. And it's like, because if it's filmed but like meant to be filmed, then you can like actually use the language of film and like make a film. Whereas when you're filming a stage play, you're limited because you're not making it as a film. You're doing it as like a record of another medium. So on principle, audiobooks, I'm like I would love to listen to an audio drama adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. But just someone reading the text word for word feels like it's missing. It's like it is like a miss.
Even though that's like how you read it? Or like
yes, because it's meant to, because the part of the medium is me silently reading the words in my head. Because, people say like, oh, I thought to myself. You're not actually hearing anything.
No.
Right? So, imagining the words in your head is different than hearing the words. There's a different artistic experience. So, like, just literally reading it word for word, recording it, and then that essentially now being in a different medium is like when you translate something from English to Spanish, but like word for word translate, but you kind of miss like the meaning.
Yeah.
Not the full, but anyway, so on principle, I'm kind of against audiobooks. Now, that being said, they're really important, again, if you're like you have not hard of hearing, but like for vision, sight issues, or you're blind completely, right? So I'm not trying to say like, oh, sorry, you're locked out from this medium if you have this disability,
no.
But I think it undermines what makes because ultimately you're not able to exploit the medium because you're not actually building it from the ground up for that medium, right? It's not an adaptation; it's literally just reading it, right? But maybe for this, because it's just so dense, maybe it would be better. But I feel like I'll also get distracted and be like, I have to rewind. I wasn't listening.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, it's good for like doing stuff, but then
you're not really paying attention. Like you're kind of missing it.
Yeah. And then like, sometimes you might have to go back or whatever, or like, I don't know. It's difficult because like, you want to find someone that like you can tolerate talking.
That's another thing.
Like
It's so contingent.
Hours.
It's so contingent on the voice of the voice actor. I'm sure this has had great audiobooks made of it because it's so iconic.
Yeah.
But I would be shocked. I mean, I say I would be shocked, but if they didn't do this, they would be stupid. That they should have had Ian McKellen do a recording of it.
That would be.
We'll put a caveat.
Gold.
While it still has the aesthetic, artistic issues, I'm a little more amenable to autobiographies read by the person. Because that's an interesting experience. But just like something like this,
True. Yeah, like Jeanette. Yeah,
like Jeanette McCurdy, or just like a Britney Spears. I don't know. Britney Spears didn't do it. She hired someone because it was like too emotional for her to do.
Yeah, I bet.
So I forget who they hired. It was like who was it? It was like a big deal.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh wait, who? Britney Spears.
I just listened to Crime and Punishment.
Autobiography, audiobook. Who did the voice?
I like to just listen to Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, but you're not even like paying attention.
I am paying attention. I remember the story. I know.
Who did it? Oh, Michelle Williams.
Oh.
Did Britney Spears' thing. So there's like a little more thought put into it, right? But anyway. My favorite part of this movie were the backgrounds. The ones that were like very detailed. Because again, you could spend more time doing it because once you do it, you're done. Whereas it's not cost effective to make every single frame of the character's motion really detailed.
Wait, which Michelle Williams? The black or the white one?
You're thinking Wendy Williams.
No, I'm looking up Michelle W. and Google suggests Michelle Williams, American actress, and Michelle Williams, American singer and actress.
What does that have to do with white or black? The actress, the white lady.
Okay.
Why would Britney Spears get like a black woman to do her voice?
It's just a voice.
It's more than a voice.
Oh, actually, I think it was. I think it might have been the black one.
1 to 10, Viviana. What do you? No. It was Michelle Williams, the white actress, who did Britney Spears' autobiography.
Okay.
Viviana, 1 to 10. What do you give? Stop looking that up.
Oh.
Do that later.
I saw pictures.
What do you do? What are you giving?
Oh,
this 1
Michelle.
to 10? You know Michelle Williams. You've seen her and stuff.
Destiny Child, Michelle.
No. 1 to 10.
6. I'm gonna give it a 6. I was going.
6.
I was going to give it a 7, but then I was like, that's really just for like well, you're gonna laugh at me, but for posterity purposes.
I don't think you're using that word the way you think. I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Historical purposes. So yeah, it was fine. It was nothing special, but I think going for
got the job done, but
going for it, good job.
Got the job done, but
what about you?
I'm gonna give it a 6 as well. It was fine, but I don't plan on ever watching this again.
Yeah.
Short of doing it for some kind of project like this, because there's just not a lot there.
Yeah.
And it's not great animation either. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's a feast for the eyes, you know? So that's like another issue with it.
And other thing too is I did want a little bit more distinction between the other movies, right? So if this has a 7 and then like another one has like a 9, it's not too far off, So it's like,
yeah.
Whoa there.
Well, now I really want to keep going with this because the next one's going to be interesting to talk about. But at least for now, that's it for this week's episode. Now, that's what I call a franchise. Next week, we'll be watching the next film in the franchise, the 1978 film, The Lord of the Rings. Viviana, where can they find us?
So cool. I think I made that joke before. You guys
Should I give them my address?
No!
Oh, we're moving soon.
No! Oh. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Franchise Podcast.
And if you have the time, leave a rating for us on Apple Podcasts, because apparently that helps.
And if you have even more time, leave us a review too.
We know you have many podcasting options, and we thank you for choosing us. Peace out, guys.
Later, dude.